I would like to invite Pujya Swami Atma Shraddhananda ji to deliver the lecture on the essence of the Bhagavad Gita for the modern man. Swami Atma Shraddhananda is the editor of Vedanta Kesari, the spiritual and cultural monthly in English language being published from the Ramakrishna Mutt, Chennai. He is a senior monk of the Sri Ramakrishna order. Request you to please take over.
Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripa tamaham vande paramananda madhavam. Dear Shri Parthasarathi ji, dear Shri Narasimhan, and other dignitaries on the stage, and those in the audience, all the lovers of the Bhagavad Gita and of the Indian culture, and my very dear young friends. It's a matter of great privilege and happiness to be part of yet another function on this eternal source of inspiration, the Bhagavad Gita. Though it is historically a very old book, written perhaps thousands of years back, I'm not going into the scholastic portion of when it was written and what's the view of the Western scholars and what's the view of the Indian scholars. Sufficient to say that it's very old, and it has been the bedrock of Indian culture, Indian spiritual tradition for centuries. The ever smallest ever commentary written on the Bhagavad Gita, although there are many commentaries written as old, as far as back as during Shankara or Adi Shankara's time and later great Acharyas, and numerous modern commentaries. But the smallest commentary perhaps which can be spoken of about the Gita is by Sri Ramakrishna. He said, if you repeat the word Gita a number of times, you get the essence of the Gita. Now when you repeat the word Gita, it becomes, if you repeat it number of times, Gita, 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 it becomes Tagi, 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 Tagi. Tagi is a simplified word for Tyagi or Tyaga. This is the message of the Gita. Give up the lower self and assert your higher self. Gita. Give up your lower self and assert the higher self. Now in the next few minutes, when I am here to share some thoughts, I shall focus my talk mainly to the youth present here. To all the students who have come from the school, who are present here after the class hours, who have just now received the books. And the books which we had released are also meant for inculcating or invoking higher values among the youth. Panchajanyam Beacons is meant for the global youth. Let us begin with the local youth, our friends here. At the beginning of the function, an incident was referred to by Sri Narasimhan about an accident that took place in Jaipur recently, which shook the conscience of the nation, where they saw, it was actually almost recorded on TV, that a family going on two-wheeler fell down, an accident, and they're lying in a pool of blood, and numerous people passed by without even paying a sympathetic look at them. Eventually, 2 of them died. This is a warning bell for all right-thinking people. Why we are becoming so callous? Why are we becoming so heartless? Should we blame the government or the police that if we go and inform, we will get into some kind of trouble? Or should we look into our own selves and try to find out whether something is wrong with us? It's very important that we should learn to introspect. To my young friends here, I would ask them, have you thought over it? What's the purpose of life? Why is a human being born? Is he born only to have a career in life? Is he born only to make money, make a family, and finally you become old and die? Is there nothing higher in human possibilities? Now, this question has been asked in the Indian tradition for centuries. We find one of the earliest questions or earliest phrasing of these questions in the famous Sankhya Karika of Ishvara Krishna. It's written more than 2000 years back. He says there, Dukkhatraya vigata jignasa parivartate. When we are afflicted by 3 kinds of dukkha or misery or pain, do we start asking the question about life? Please remember, the Indian mind wishes to generalize. It wants to make a sweeping look at the world, sweeping look at the problems and the solutions. So we have most generalized questions, we have most generalized concept about life. We all have problems. We all suffer from some kind of problem. There's a funny anecdote about an American president who was going after demitting his office. He was going along with his friend, and on the beach he met many people, and whomsoever he will meet, he will say, "All right, is your problem solved?" And the person will say, "Yes, I'm happy now." So it happened for a long time, and then his friend asked the president, "Sir, how do you remember the problems of so many people?" He said, "I don't remember anyone's problem. Everyone has a problem. I just ask it, did you solve your problem?" So everyone is having a problem. Your little child also has his own troubles. Old people also have trouble. So all these problems have been generalized into 3 categories by the Ishvara Krishna. And we find this reflection of Dukkhatraya, how to find a solution to it, in the Bhagavad Gita. What are these 3 problems? The first problem is called the Adi Daivika problem. The problem caused to man by elements of nature. Tsunami, earthquake, floods, storm, they all create a problem. Not only when they are in bad shape, elements of nature create a challenge for our day-to-day living also. For example, it is hot here. Chennai and heat go together. And here we have tried to solve it by putting on electric appliances. It is dark outside, but we are sitting here in light. So we have fought the elements of nature by development of science. So this is the first way of solving our problems. We develop science, we go into the elements, study them, find out how they work and how we can overcome them, and the result is what we call as science. All the entire range of sciences that we have, they all come under the study of man at the elemental nature. This is the first problem or first suffering that everyone has to face. This is the first struggle which one has. So there should be proper air, proper light, proper water. We need all of that. Then again, the second type of problem, the Adibhautika problem. The problem caused to us by other beings. It could be wild animals like snakes, insects, lions, wild, violent people, or people around us. They can cause problem to us. Adhibhautika problem. So look at the range of summarizing the problems. The second type of problem is the problem caused by other beings, either the animals or humans, and to solve that we have found out our own ways. We have perhaps created a society. We have created ways to protect ourselves by making police, military, rules, corporations, municipal bodies, so that the rights of everyone are looked into. So there is some kind of a solution. Now, how much we are able to implement it is a question, which is a constantly evolving issue. New situations, new circumstances, new coming, as it was referred to. Now the Google has come into picture. Now we have everywhere the challenge of information overload, information explosion. So we have to solve that. We have to find out how we can face this situation. The third type of problem is a problem that man creates for himself, by himself. It is known as Adhyatmika Dukkha. Adhyatma generally is associated with spirituality. But literally the word Adhyatma means that which is within us. What is within us? What am I? Who is a human being? What makes a human being? Acharya Shankara, in his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, says, almost the beginning of the commentary, that as long as man exercises his viveka, his power of discernment, right thinking, he is a human being. When he loses the power of viveka, he is just a living being. Is any amount of utilization of thinking power is called viveka? Viveka is that where you have first of all tremendous faith in virtue, in dharma. Do we have faith that there is a power, an order, a cosmic order which operates this world, and we call it dharma? Dharma does not mean a religion. Dharma means that which integrates. Dharayate iti dharma. That which allows man to remain integrated with a higher reality. It does not allow it to disintegrate. That is dharma. If you do not have dharma in your life, it is one of the greatest misfortune of a modern day life, that we have emphasized more on rights than on duties. We speak of human rights. Of course we have rights. But if we have only rights and no duties, those rights become actually wrongs. They are no longer rights. We have duties. We have to respond to the nature. We have to respond to the family. We have to respond to the society. We have to respond to our own spiritual needs. That is dharma. We speak of values. We speak of need to inculcate values. But values are such, they cannot be just taught. Values have to be caught. And these values can be caught only when there are people around us who follow them. We catch the values by observation. When you look at someone, you actually absorb his personality, absorb the silent traits which he has in his being. So it was said that if you want to cultivate a character, your higher, nobler side of your life, live in the company of those people who have character. The simplest method is that. Of course, books can be of some help, but the best is to live in the company of someone or keep the company of someone who himself or herself is a person of character. That's the best way to cultivate values. Of course, within the system, within the curriculum, within the teaching or education, there is a need to have teaching of values. Now the government has realized it very well, that it is not just sufficient to educate people and develop their aptitude. We also need attitude. If you have only aptitude and no attitude or right attitude, you turn out to be highly educated but dangerous beings. Look at the corruption that we have become used to. It's not always carried out by very educated people. It is carried out by very educated people, not very, the people who are given to lot of intelligence, they take up to corruption. As he referred to in the train accident that took near Arakonam, it is a small little people who came forward and helped. Which means it is the goodness of heart that matters, not simply accumulation of knowledge. Accumulation of knowledge will make you like a computer. Swami Vivekananda used to say, you may have known all the libraries of the world, but you are a true human being if you are able to practice just 5 ideas. If you are able to practice 5 ideas, you are better than a person who knows the entire library by heart. So we stand and we give talk. Well, that's good, but that's the first step. The next is, are we able to put into practice? We already know it. We already know that these values are there. Only we have to be told or reinforced about. For example, when you are very small, when you are in the primary school, you are told that don't tell untruth. Is it such a big teaching? Be truthful. Do not hurt anybody. Do not trouble anybody. Be honest. Now just think over it further. These are very simple few things. Values, we don't have to write a whole PhD thesis to prove it. This is the very basis of life. In a family, for example, if you do not tell truth to the family members will lose the trust. A simple necessity of life. We expect others to be truthful. We want others to be honest. We want others to be punctual. But when it comes to us, we want to take liberty. Is that the right way of doing? Is it the right way of practicing higher values in life? We should rather first practice ourselves. That is how we can really put Bhagavad Gita into practice. Just one sentence is sufficient to make someone practice these values. Just one. You don't need entire Bhagavad Gita. Mr. Parsarthi has put 15 shlokas, and he has also given the 10 commandments in the book. You will find in one of the chapters. That is trying to summarize, trying to simplify, trying to make the things easier. Because things are very easy, but we have in our mind, we think, oh, living this kind of honest life or life of values in today's world is very difficult. And then we look around and they say, why there is so much of misery, so much of corruption, so many problems in life? Because you are not making it accessible in your life. Make it accessible. So Bhagavad Gita is a remarkable source of inspiration. It's like a river. Now when you go to a river, you say, is it the water that is flowing, is it old or is it new? Is the river new or is the river old? You may say a river is old. It is flowing for the last 7,000 years or 10,000 years. But same river is giving you the water, giving you the source of life. Though it is old, though Bhagavad Gita, for example, is old, it continues to give you the strength that you require. There was this young man who once went to his uncle's house, and there he found the uncle reading the Bhagavad Gita. This young man asked his uncle, do you still believe in these things? Do you think that these are practicable? To which his uncle asked him, where are you going? He said, well, I am going to the market. What for? He said, to buy some paint and some vegetables. He said, do you expect the person who sells you paint to give you a spurious or something not genuine and charge you for that which is genuine? He said, no, I would like to have good paint, and for which I pay, I should get that. And suppose you go to the vegetable seller, you pay for 5 kg, but he gives you 4 kgs. Would you accept it? He said, no, I won't. I would rather insist that he gives me the right thing. He says, at home, do you expect the people to speak harshly to you? He said, no, I would not. I would like to want them to speak sweetly to me. Similarly, in the office, would you like people to play some kind of craft of politics behind you and create problem for you? He said, no, I would not like that to happen. I would like them people to be integrated, transparent, straightforward. Then the uncle said, look, my friend, you expect everyone else to keep up to certain standard in life. You want everyone else to take up these values, whether it is the shopkeeper or the office staff or the people at home or anyone else. You wish them to take up these values and practice it. But when it comes to you, you say whether it is practicable. You say whether it is necessary that I should practice this value. This is what we should ask ourselves. That we have to have a sense of identification with a higher self. The Bhagavad Gita contains a lot of practical hints for making our life a rich and fulfilling experience. Take for instance one of the issues which comes in life of all people, that is anger or greed. How much suffering this emotion causes. It's like a household evil. Everywhere it is available. How do we overcome anger? You find a lot of hint about it in the Bhagavad Gita. There is a section in the 2nd chapter of the Gita which deals with the qualities of a man of realization. A person who has grown spiritually. Such a person is known as Sthita Prajna. Sthita Prajnasya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava sthita kim prabhasheta kimasita vrajeta kim. This section of the Gita was very dear to Mahatma Gandhi. In all his prayer meetings, he used to get this recited. In this section, we have 2 verses which deal with the question which I raised about how do we overcome anger, how do we overcome greed. There are these 2 verses which speak of, first of all, how does the anger come? What is the psychology behind it? What is the process behind anger? We generally recognize the object or the person or the situation as causing us anger, but we do not go into the psychology of it. But the Gita speaks of it. It says, Dhyayate Vishayan Pumsas Sangasteshu Pajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kamah Kamat Krodho Vichayate Krodad Bhavati Sammoha Sammoha Smriti Vibhrama Smriti Nasho Buddhinashat Buddhinashat Pranashyati. This is the whole picture given about anger. The meaning is that as one dwells lovingly on sense objects, dhyayate vishayan pumsaha. Pumsa means human beings. Dhyayate, they think over. Vishayan, the sense objects. An inclination towards them is generated. You become attached to it. For example, a person goes to a departmental store or a mall or a shop and looks at an object. He looks at it again and again, and by looking at it, he develops a liking for it. Dhyayate vishayan pumsah sangasteshu pajayate. Sangha is born, a liking is born. Now this is what the advertising people know it very well. go on advertising things so that once you see it again and again, you develop a liking for it. When liking is done, what happens then? Then desire to possess comes. Sangasteshu upajayate, sangat jayate kamaha. Kama means desire to possess it. I must have it. Whether I have the means or not, I must have it. And once we try to have it, it assumes the form of intense wanting. Intensity comes into our wanting, our seeking that object. And that, when it is obstructed for some reason, that when it is obstructed from in its flow, it generates a reaction, and that reaction is called krodha. Krodha is a reaction caused to our intense desire to have something or expect something. It should be like that. It should be not like this, but like this. That kind of intensity when it comes, and it is obstructed because of various factors. That reaction is called krodha. Krodhat bhavati sammoha. Sammoha smriti vibhramaha. Krodha causes a kind of delusion or unclarity of thinking. What should be done, what should not be done. There was this teacher in a primary school who was teaching the students, and little children were as usual very mischievous. One little child was more mischievous than the others, and the teacher lost complete control over herself. She took the duster and threw at the child. It almost hit him near the eye. Now, as a mother, as a human being, does she not know that it hits? Does it not know that it will be an injury to the child? She knows. But smriti bhamshaha. Then you forget the right things. Why? Krodha has come. When krodha comes, then it becomes a sense of as if a muddy or muddled thinking. And that leads to loss of remembering what is good. And from that comes buddhi nasha. We forget what is right, what is wrong. For small little things, people can go to such extent. I was told by one of the teachers who is teaching in a school here in Mylapore, she was mentioning it has become very difficult to teach the students. They expect only sweet words. You cannot scold anybody. If you scold anybody, you are afraid whether he will come next day or not, or whether we'll hear something wrong about him. Why? Why do you lose confidence over yourself? Why not face yourself? Face the life. Develop that strength within. Why just go and take an extreme step? There is so much bigger life. Life is not just small little four walls in which you live. Life is not just that you are born and you one fine day grow up and die. Life is much more than that. Life is much more than your career. Have you gone and see what is happening in a village? Life is a huge expanse before you. Why do you restrict it to your only selfish or self-centered focus? This higher, larger view of life should come. So whenever we read the Bhagavad Gita, whenever we read the holy scriptures that have come down to us, we must remember they are not meant as an intellectual pleasure of some scholars, but they are meant as source of strength, a source of finding a meaning in life, a meaning in self-control, a meaning in understanding life situations. The word Shastra, those who know would know it, means that which protects you by teaching. Shasanat trayate iti shastram. Shasanat. It comes from the root word shas. Shas means that which protects you, which guides you, which in a way takes you on the right path. That is a Shastra. It is not just an intellectual study. So many books have been written. It is meant to guide our life, to fulfill it, to make it more meaningful. So the essence of the entire Upanishads, or the whole body of Indian spiritual tradition, can be found in the Bhagavad Gita. It is the best commentary on the Upanishads. It is the best commentary on the spiritual tradition of India. I'm very happy that we have all gathered here to celebrate one such release, the release of the Bhagavad Gita's new way of looking at it. I was just talking to Mr. Parsarthi before coming here. Suppose someone makes a library of the Bhagavad Gita publications all over the world, in all languages, all publications, all now PowerPoint presentations, pictures, whatever, it would be a huge thing. The book has been translated into practically all languages. Plus, people have written now and then, like Mr. Parsarthi has written, their understanding of the Bhagavad Gita, because they have found something meaningful in that. They have found something which is fulfilling, that gives them a direction in life. My young friends, please try to have a spiritual ideal in life. By spiritual ideal does not mean that you become monks. It doesn't mean that you have to become and assume an externally religious life. That is secondary. Primary thing is that it will make you better human beings. It should make you into the human beings which are the need of the hour. Men, these are wanted. Everything else will come. But we want strong, vigorous men, sincere to the backbone. You make any system in the world, any democracy, or any political or administrative system, it is a man behind the system that matters most. So please try to remember the meaning of spirituality is that we become better human beings. Better. Don't say we are bad. From good to better. Don't say that we have done something wrong, we are sinners, we are bad. No, we have done something good. We have made mistakes also, but we can improve, we can become better. So we have in the Bhagavad Gita various aspects of life, such as how to work, the karma, how to have devotion, or tremendous bhakti for the Lord. We have the jnana, or the knowledge of the self. Now this one lecture is not meant to give you the overview of the whole Bhagavad Gita, only to ignite in you a little desire to read this further, to take up yourself. You're all educated people. You are one of those blessed people in this world who have got the education, because not everyone goes to school. Not everyone comes to the standard to which you're studying either. Many of them drop off in between. If you know the larger picture of India itself, with 120 crore people, you find not everyone has got chance to study as you are studying. So be thankful for that, and be thankful also that you are introduced to these higher ideas at a young age. Please try to absorb it. Please try to think over it. Internalize it in such a way that it becomes part of your thinking. It becomes part of your, the way you want to, whenever you speak, it is as if the Bhagavad Gita's ideas which are speaking through you. That much of deep thinking is required. The Gita can be memorized, 700 shlokas, there are people who memorize, and that's wonderful that you do it. But even more than that, more than memorization, it is following even just one verse in your life that can give you enough peace and strength. There's a famous statement by Ralph Waldo Emerson, the famous transcendentalist of the Californian area in America. He said that one verse of the Gita is of more value than the entire state of Massachusetts put together. Now, this was written some 180 or 90 years back. He said, entire state of Massachusetts, that is such a huge American state, is nothing before one little verse from this Gita. He came in touch with the Gita through one of his friends. So this is what we should remember again and again, that there is life-giving force in these books. And that life-giving force, very interestingly, now it is coming back to us through the West. So Western authors, they take up these ideas and they write beautiful books, and we go and buy it. And we say, yes, now this is meant for us. When you read those books, you will realize that they are nothing but what is being said in the Gita, because they are based on eternal ideas. They are not man-made. Just as the science ideas are not man-made, the law of Newton was not made by Newton. It existed even before Newton came. Because Newton discovered it, we call it the law of Newton. It's not Newton's personal property. Likewise, the Gita is not anyone's property. It is open to all, and anyone who can read it with that attitude of deriving strength from it, guidance from it, he will find that the Gita has been a great friend and a great sense of peace and strength you will get. With these few words, I shall conclude. I was told that if there are any questions or any interaction required, we'll be welcome to have it. Thank you. Namaskar.